Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Shadowcast. Today, as usual, I have Chris Ball
Hello.
and David Bray,
Hello.
and our special guest today is Mike Paterson.
Hey guys, nice to be here. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Nice to meet you, Mike. And we're going to be talking all about Mike's adventures. I'm not going to say any more because what I'd like to do is to allow Mike to explain fully what he's been doing and what exciting news he has for us. So, first of all, Mike, could you briefly introduce yourself and what do you do?
My name's Mike Paterson. I have a YouTube channel called Sasquatch Ontario, so I've been involved with that for 18 years now. I don't really have much else going on at the moment, except writing here. But as far as work is concerned, I didn't follow the path of a career in that, right? So I bounced around, through a lot of odd jobs over the decades and that. Um, but this subject and my field investigative work, this is priority in my life, right? So for 18 years, I've been spending time in the field. Um, it was back in 2007, say, that I bought some photography gear and I started going into the woods, my time off, just photographing wildlife and nature. And it, at one point, I had this epiphany that I should start looking for Sasquatch. It wasn't on my mind at the time. It just kind of came out of nowhere. And I have my thoughts about that at this point, considering what I'm dealing with. So I started looking into the subject, and I think they were watching me in the woods, and they liked how I interacted with nature, right? I'm a nature guy, right? I love all animals, and I love nature. So I get this epiphany and I start looking into the subject of Sasquatch, just scrolling through stuff online, YouTube videos. And I always thought one had to go to the West Coast, BC, Oregon, whatever, Washington, out that way, out in the West Coast somewhere to have any chance, perhaps, of an encounter. I didn't know they were here in Ontario. So I'm basically about an hour and a half north of Toronto. And here where I live now, I'm surrounded by woods. It's a beautiful area. But when I started looking into the reports and I saw that there was Sasquatch sightings and reports out of Ontario, I was surprised. So I started looking into it, and at some point I made a comment on a YouTube video, and this gent contacted me and asked me if I wanted to go to area of previous activity. And then he gave me a kind of a half explanation of where it was. And I was like really skeptical because it was too close, and it wasn't in any remote forested region. It wasn't out there in the middle of nowhere. There's basically the proximity to humans was close. So I was surprised, very skeptical. So I went out before that once to a place called it was in the Bon Echo region, which is a provincial park here in Ontario, and I was camping with a friend of mine, and this was the very first time I went looking for Sasquatch. So it was the next morning. We're having our having a Caesar breakfast, and they're always good when you're camping, right?
Yes.
And in the morning, we suddenly hear this screaming, primal, animalistic, just it was ongoing, just screaming over and over, and I'd never heard anything like it in my life. it was, in the distance, right? But when I got home and I started looking into videos and that, I found a video of some guys breaking down a camp, and they had the same sound going off in the distance. It matched what I heard, and it was basically Sasquatch. I know my stuff now. So fast forward to 2008, when this guy had contacted me, asked me if I wanted to go into this area of previous activity. Um, it ended up, I talked to him a little bit, and then I think about a month passed, and then went into October of 2008. And so the week before the 25th, he contacted me, said, you want to do this? And I said, yeah, sure. Let's go the next Saturday, which was October 25th. So I met him at this location uh, about noon, and we went in there. It was a pretty gray day, bit of a slight drizzle later on, but so we walked the trails, and this guy had been doing this for a while. He didn't know what they're capable of, but he had experience. So, we went in doing what typical people do when they get involved in this subject. You're banging on trees, doing wood knocks and that sort of thing. So at one point, it was 4.5 hours later, so about 4:30 in the afternoon, and he picked up a fist-sized rock. He walked up to a big pine and he smacked it, you know, 3, 4 times, dropped the rock, and just a few seconds later, I heard what sounded like, and I've matched it to like a gorilla chest thump, like, a rapid. It was like if you pull up mountain gorillas or whatever lowland gorillas when they thump their chest, it's that same sound, exact same sound, and it was a really rapid 3 times. That was it. And I know my forest sounds pretty good. You know, there's always stuff that you've never heard, but this sat with me really strange. It had a really bizarre energy to it. I put my arm up to, tell the other guy, let's listen, be quiet and listen. And then just a few seconds after that, these giant, massive guttural whoops, 3 of them, really raspy sounding. And he sounded 10 feet tall, and he sounded human, but not. He had an animalistic tone to him. And my life changed right there. I knew they were real right then and there. And what was funny was we're on this trail, and people walk their dogs through the forest there, and there's people on horseback, that sort of thing. Um, this lady that come walking around the corner, we realized she was closer than we were, so she heard it loud and clear, and she wouldn't have had a clue what was going on. I remember when she walked by us. She had this scowl on her face. She was just walking a little dog, right? She had a scowl on her face, and we just kind of nodded as she walked past. And I always wonder if, what she thought of that back then. If whatever she had anybody at home or friends, um, I'm sure she would have said something, and she wouldn't have known what it was, though, right? But when that happened, we sat down and stayed for a little bit to see if anything else would happen. Nothing did. So it was a slight rain starting. So we left, and then I went back by myself the very next week. So that call that I heard, that vocalization, it played on my mind. It had such a profound impact. It played on my mind from the second I woke up till I went to bed every day, probably for months. It just wouldn't leave my mind. It wouldn't leave my head. So the very next week, I went back in there, and I was by myself this time. And I actually went to another part just up the road, not far from there. There's about 5,000 acres of forest up in the region, but it's segregated into concessions, right? Bordered by roads and that. And there's homes, surrounding the perimeter of these. You can get lost in there for a while, anyways, till you come out to a road if you don't know the trails good enough. But anyways, I went back to this same area the next week, and this is when I had my first incident of high strangeness. So I went in by myself. I had my intention at that time was to get the photograph of a lifetime. My that was my intent at first. That's changed big time. But and they know your intention too, which is why I think they did this. So I was walking along a trail and I heard that exact same triple chest thump, gorilla chest thump sound that I heard the week before. That was immediately prior to the vocalization. So I knew they were right there. They're right there beside me on the trail. I didn't see anything. There's a stand of spruce trees in there, and I'm thinking, oh, they must be hidden in there somewhere, but I'm no different now. And as soon as I heard that, I knew they were there. And next thing I know, I'm 20 minutes down the highway driving home, not knowing, not remembering leaving. I felt fine. I didn't feel disoriented. Nothing, nothing strange. They just they have this ability, and they made me leave without any fear. I don't remember getting in my car and leaving. And 20 minutes down the road, maybe I'm give my head a shake, what the hell am I doing here? I was just back there. So that was my first incident of high strangeness there. And I had another one in that same area. I think it was maybe about a year later. I was in there with that first guy that I went in there with, who kind of showed me the ropes. And we were in there. It was during the week, very bright lit moon, very bright night, very moonlit night, and there was snow on the ground. So we were walking this trail, 2 o'clock in the morning. There's nobody around, dead still, and I see this trackway crossing the trail. So I'm stopping to check to see what made the prints. I couldn't see any toe markings yet. I was trying to figure out what it made. Is this line of footprints? Is this a deer that was hopping through? Or I wasn't sure, right? And then suddenly we hear bipedal footsteps crunching through the snow right there beside us. And we didn't need, you didn't even need a flashlight that night. It was so bright, right? Even though we still had them. But um, I remember, I was freaking out because there's somebody walking around us, but there's nothing there. It was nothing. Just, and then the footsteps stopped, and there was quite a few of them, and there was no footprints being made in the snow, just the sound of somebody bipedal walking, crunch, crunch, crunch through the snow right there. And so that was another incident of high strangeness that comes with this. And then I spent the next 4 years in that region going through, the trails and learning the trails. And I had numerous incidents over the years that I ran into them. I never had a visual. They didn't give me a visual, but one morning I get out of my car, I'm walking. Um, uh, when I go in there, when I was first doing that, I was announcing my presence with a sequence of knocks. So I would go, I'd go up to a tree and I go bang, bang, short pause, bang. I would always do that to announce I'm here, right? So I pulled in the parking lot one morning and I get out of my car. There's nobody there. It's empty. I get out of my car and walk around the other side to get my gear, just out of the other side of the vehicle. And as soon as I get out of my car, I hear loud and clear. I hear bang, bang, short pause, bang. Somebody wood knocking on a tree, doing my exact wood knock the moment I get out of my vehicle. And I didn't know what I was dealing with at that point. So I was like, what the hell's going on? Is somebody watching me? Somebody know what I'm doing? Like I was confused, right? How this could happen. And another time I'm walking down the trail, I pull in there and I was the first vehicle there. There was nobody there. So I start walking down this trail and then shortly after I did that, I heard this other vehicle pull into the parking lot. So I continue walking, and then all of a sudden I hear this big loud whoo, right there. It sounded all around me. And again, I got confused. I thought, how the hell could that person come up behind me that fast, that close. They just pulled in. And then I realized it wasn't them. Another one vocalized maybe 100 yards up the trail the way I was walking and vocalized back to that one who was right there beside me, basically. And they were just toying with me, letting me know, hey, we're right here, but there's no visual, right? So I had numerous incidents over the years in that area, and that was my training ground. Even though I went to different locations, uh, up in Algonquin Park, we went there or outside of the park jurisdiction. So that spot that's remote. And there was a hunt camp nearby, and it's a logger road that you got to have the right vehicle to get in there or you're not getting in there unless you're walking. But we were 3 kilometers in, found this great camp spot. And um, the guy that I was with, he went in the night before and it was raining. So this camp spot we have, it's like a secondary trail off the main logger road, and you pull in there, can't see his vehicle. There's nobody there anyways, right? And I showed up the next morning, so he had to come out and pick me up at my because my vehicle couldn't get in there. So I parked. When he come and picked me up, he told me a story. He goes, "Yeah, something banged on my truck last night, a bunch of times." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking?" Because I wasn't schooled enough yet. And I was skeptical about the story he was telling me. So that night, the two of us are there. It was, well, the next morning, I get woken up. So it's still pitch black where his vehicle is parked. It's shrouded in forest. It's just breaking light where my tent setup is, which is maybe 30 feet away from where his truck is. He's sleeping in the cab of his truck. And I suddenly hear this. I must have gotten woken up by a tree limb crack because, so I wake up and suddenly I hear a tree limb break and then another one, a big, huge crack. And my eyes go wide as saucers and my left brain logical side is thinking, oh, it must be a moose, you know, probably a moose. And then I'm listening, it's dead still. And then I hear two footsteps, two bipedal steps, and then bang, bang, bang on his truck, the other guy's truck. And I'm like, I'm confused. Oh, what the hell is he doing banging on his truck at this time of the morning? Made no sense to me. And then I ended up falling asleep, get up later, and I bring it up and we have a discussion. I said, "What the hell are you doing banging on your truck at, first thing in the morning?" And he didn't have a clue what I was talking about. I heard his truck door open. I heard him take a leak. And so what he told me was um, he was up late the previous night. I crashed a bit earlier, and he so he was in a deep sleep. So he didn't hear the bangs on the truck, but it woke him up. And then he opened the door and he told me, he goes, "I didn't even get out of my truck to relieve myself." He just did it from the seat because he had fear. He'd had this wave of fear come over him. He couldn't understand why, right? And then I was like, okay. Um, I heard two footsteps outside first. So basically, we figured out you had a Sasquatch standing right there, you know, 2 footsteps away, banged on your truck. You opened the door, um, and it was that same spot where one night, again, dead still. I had a tarp over my tent, and there was wind that night, and I'm running audio, so I'm recording audio. I didn't record that first night there with the truck bangs and all that. Um, so I had audio running on this one where something brushed my tarp on my tent, over my tent, and there was there was nothing there, and it was no wind. So I could hear on the audio, all this wind going on and no movement from my tarp at all. The microphones are sensitive, right? So I'm trying to figure that out. And we're sitting there in the dark as well, one night, and we hear this, or not hear, suddenly this putrid smell of rotting flesh shows up. No, and again, it's dead quiet. So I can't hear any animals coming in, no footsteps. And this this smell just shows up and then lasted about 2 minutes and then it was just gone. So that's another thing I've learned that they can do, right? So Sasquatch actually do not smell. They create smells. They can turn them on and off like a light switch, and they can direct them to an individual in a group setting. So I've had this shown to me indoors over and over and over again by a young fella in the situation I'm involved in with now, right? So basically, those first 5 years altogether, I think was them getting me prepared for what was to come. So when we're dealing with Sasquatch, their consciousness, and this is what I'm so adamant about, their consciousness is so evolved. They make humans look slow in every way, and I'm talking, strength, speed, but their cognitive ability is it's unfathomable. You can't even comprehend how evolved it is. And this is a big part of it's their intelligence. They're very intelligent, so it's very easy for them to remain hidden by choice, and they understand how energies work. And so at this point, I've been involved in a situation where in our 14th winter, interacting with a family of Sasquatch, and we're on a first name basis basically, and they've been revealing their presence to us every visit since day one. So this is 14 winters. So I literally have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of encounter incidents with this family at this point. So
Okay, thank you, Mike. That's
that was a
quite
that was a bit of a stretch there.
well. It's fascinating. The first question I would have, uh, apart from moose, what other animals will be found in these woodlands? Where you
Bear, moose, wolves. Um, there might be lynx and bobcat and that sort of thing.
okay? What strikes
That was up in the Algonquin area. Actually, where I go now, that same type of animals would be in that region too, right? Where I'm interacting now, but we're actually at a cottage. We're indoors most of the night. They're indoors with us. The activity's indoors. We get a lot of people involved in this subject. They do gifting, and they'll do it outside in the woods. Find a gift tree, and we were doing that. But now all the gifting's done indoors at the end of the kitchen counter. That's how evolved it is. So
and I wonder how the Sasquatch interact with the creatures of the woodland.
um, I've recorded a few times. They like to get the coyotes going. They get the pack of coyotes yipping, and then you can hear the Sasquatch moaning and making vocalizations among the pack of coyote sounds, right? They will mimic other animals. They've shown us this with like a wolf howl or something. That's not a wolf, it's them. And they showed us one day, we're sitting in the cottage and the loudest wolf howl happened. It's middle of the day, happened right outside the cottage wall. It was so loud it sounded like it was indoors. And that's not a wolf. You know, wolves don't do that. They're not going to the way this is situated too, there's no wolves really coming in there, and just the setting of the cottage. It's it's not you can tell when it's them, right? When you've been doing this long enough. So as far as how they interact with all the other animals, I don't know. I think that they can probably see through the eyes of animals with their understanding of consciousness. I don't know that for a fact, but I definitely entertain the thought, and I might figure this out one day because I've also developed written communication with them too, right? It's crazy stuff. It's all crazy.
Well, it's certainly interesting. And how do they present to you? Did you say that they enter your property?
No, so I got invited. It was back in 2012. The other guy was putting out YouTube videos, and I told him, don't put our location in the description field. You know, you're very protective over your locations when you get involved in the subject, right? And so he put in a town name nowhere near us, just threw that in there to try and deter people. It ended up being a town name closest to the property that I investigate now. So as the owner of that property, he saw that town name. He had filed several reports with the Bigfoot Research Organization. They never responded back to him, and I'm really glad they didn't because not a fan. But he saw that and he reached out to the other guy that I was making these campouts with and searching for Sasquatch stuff. And as soon he got this information that there's Sasquatch presence on this property. So the owner had reached out to my acquaintance there, and when he told me about getting that phone call with that information, I had it was very strange. I had a knowing that this is what I'm looking for. It was very, very strong. And I was very adamant about give me the guy's phone number. I need to talk to him, right? And it took a little bit. He held on to it for a bit. I was getting annoyed. And then finally I got the information from him and I went and interviewed this property owner. And then they invited me out to the cottage to come investigate. And by then I had lots of experience. So I knew what I was doing, basically knew what I was looking for, listening for. And I started audio recording from day one. So I've recorded every night, all night long from day one, every visit. And I knew from the first night that they had Sasquatch presence going on, right? So still didn't know what we were dealing with yet. I didn't know about their abilities and their consciousness, and that would evolve over time. So they showed their presence right away, and they started, they did it every visit basically, and they've done it every visit since. So
One of the questions that would be posed is why are these creatures not seen more often? But of course, you say that they can somehow utilize the energy that is around us all in such a way that perhaps almost if they are invisible to most people. Would you agree?
yeah, it's not almost. um, the truth of Sasquatch, and that people have a hard time with this because we've been one thing I've noticed with the Sasquatch contact, it exposes human conditioning, how conditioned our minds are, how brainwashed we are, basically, right? So we'll dismiss if somebody says invisible or interdimensional. Most people just laugh at it, but this is what we're dealing with. So Sasquatch have an ability to, I think, actually for the most part, they are completely invisible. There are no walls with them. So their activity actually can show up anywhere. And I mean anywhere. I've had it show up at a workplace. I've had it show up here at home, indoors. I've had it show up in my vehicle several times. Like I've even had a dash cam going in my car, and I was with the property owner, and we're driving down some back roads during a visit, and suddenly we hear vocalization in my car, and I captured it on my dash cam, one of their vocals, right? And it's just a short little. They really like to keep you guessing, and they're very subtle. You might hear a little whoo, and we're talking, and suddenly I go, did you just go whoo? He goes, no, I thought you did that. I said, wasn't me. So they're with us, right? They're very good at doing that, and I get a lot of that indoors at the cottage too. I've recorded their vocals indoors many times. So they have an understanding of energy consciousness that allows them to basically stay completely invisible, but they can interact with this 3D realm, like physical touch. This is how I know of their invisibility. I've been, the first time I got touched on the head, I was outside. There was some activity going on. We were by my car. I think they were throwing some snow and stuff at us, um, and I had my video camera running when this happened too, the very first time. It's only a 1 minute clip on my YouTube channel, Sasquatch Ontario, and it's the only video with 1 minute, um, you know, the only 1 minute video there is. I can't remember the name of it, but it captures the my reaction to being touched on the head the very first time, and the property owner's there, and he's standing over there 10 feet away from me, but it's so shocking. I said to him, I said, "Do you just touch me on the top of my head?" And he laughed. He goes, "From here?" Because he's too far away, right? And it's just the shock of it. So that first time they did that, I knew, that's their invisibility. But there was also in the snow, the first time I I said to the property owner, there was 3 footprints in the snow. There's no trackways, and there was clean, fresh snow, and this was on the road. And then there's a granite wall right there, maybe about 4 feet high, and then the forest, and you can see everything. And it's just clean, fresh blanket of snow, 3 footprints, no trackway in or out. And that's when I said to him the first time, I said, I think they're invisible. And, he laughed. He thought I was nuts. But this is basically what it's turned out to be, right? Um, so they have, they have their approach on us. They have ways that they like to show their presence. Apports, objects out of nothing suddenly appear. Marbles are a big part of this, although, many other objects as well. And with the speed that they can do stuff too. So, say for instance, well, I'm sitting at the kitchen table. Our routine basically, we'll sit at the kitchen table all night, have a few beers and have a discussion and go out, outside a few times, snow on the ground. When we go out, they give us prints, right? Um, so I'm sitting at the table and I turn my head for a sec, looking towards the other end of the table, property owners, sitting on that side. I look towards I had a coat draped over the back of a chair at the end of the table. I just turned my head and I looked towards there. They knew where my focus was at that moment. And at about arm's length, they pushed a marble slowly. They let me see it happen. They pushed it slowly through a veil, through a wormhole, I don't know, but from another dimension. So I see this piece of marble and they put it through slowly. And it got bigger and bigger until it popped through and dropped to the floor. And I had the window was open. I had audio recording outside, so you can hear it, my reaction, and you hear the marble hit the floor, and then I freak out. So I got to watch this, and then they did it again the next visit. I was actually bent over, putting my shoes on, and they did it between that space of my face and my shoe while I'm looking tying my shoe, right. So they let me see that 2 visits in a row, but I've literally witnessed hundreds of marbles appear like this, but not that moment where it's slow. But I've seen them, I've seen it happen many times where it just boom, it's right there. And this is a normal part of our visits, right? Or there's this too, where when I bring gifts, there was one time I brought a pie. They didn't touch it. Pie's brand new, nothing done to it. So they didn't take it. So it's like, okay, well, I'm not letting this good pie go to waste. And I cut into it, cut a slice out of there. There was a marble inside it. Or there was the pepperoni package in the fridge. Uh, the first time, Dwayne, the property owner, he goes, "Did you eat some of the pepperonis?" I said, "No, I haven't touched them." I said, "Well, I could have sworn there was more in there." And I started counting them, and they were slowly dwindling. And then one visit, the packages, he brought a pack in there. There's about 15 of them. I counted them like 3 times. Package is still sealed. It hasn't been opened yet. And I kept counting them, and they were taking pepperonis out of the package, and it's still sealed. So they can manifest and take things inside objects. One time I'm sitting at the table, I get a beer in front of me. I had left them some homemade pickles on the counter, and sitting at the table talking to the owner, I turn my head literally for 2 seconds. Go take a drink of my beer. It tastes off now all of a sudden. 2 seconds. I ended up cutting that can open. There was 4 or 5 bite-sized chunks of pickle were in the bottom of the can. He didn't have time to push those in through the top, manifested them. So this is an ability they have. They could probably manifest a marble in your ass if they wanted. Um, just the abilities they have, and I don't want to give them any ideas either.
No.
There's been a few times where Dwayne's got a marble stuck in his ear. We're sitting at the table and he's like, "What the hell's going on?" And I'm laughing at him because there's a marble. I think they've done that to him a few times now. Um, they're tricksters, so there's a lot of humor involved. There's never once in 18 years of doing this in all locations, I have never been shown any malevolence. It's all benevolent. Some stuff, depending on somebody's disposition, so, some stuff might freak some people out. They might misinterpret it, not understand their behavior. Um, it takes maybe certain things as aggressive when they're not. It's like getting rocks thrown. Um, they, I get, I've probably been hit more times than anybody on earth with a snowball by a Sasquatch. I get it pretty much every visit, at this point. And it was a recent visit for the first time. I was sitting at the kitchen table. I posted the audio of it. Again, I was recording it outside and it captured the sounds and my reaction sitting at the table. Property owner's right there, and he was doing something, and then suddenly I got hit in the back of the head with a snowball while I'm sitting at the kitchen table inside. Um, and that was a first, and that's on a recent video that I posted on my channel there. So it's pretty funny actually. Um, it's a lot of It's a lot of fun and games with these guys, but it's also teaching. They're great teachers. They're very efficient, master teachers, and I can understand why they're labeled a myth, after being witness to so much of the activity. So.
Just before I ask you a few more questions, I think it's time to bring in Chris. Chris, have you got some questions for Mike?
Yeah, I have, Mike. One of the questions is, does it go through dimensions and that different dimensions, the Bigfoot?
Yeah, they, for the most part, exist in an alternate or parallel dimension. And they do that because it keeps them safe. So they are hunted by military. They told us this. I asked this question, right? There are people in power. For anybody that's aware what's going on in this world, who's running this world, they're not nice. They are very evil. So they're aware of the Sasquatch, and the Sasquatch are a threat because they are good guys, and nothing is hidden from them. There are no secrets. So anything going on behind closed doors, they're well aware of it. They know about CERN, weather manipulation, being purposely or used to purposely harm us, that sort of thing. They're well aware of all the the stuff going on to harm humans, and I think this is why they're revealing themselves as they choose. Right? There's not a discovery; it's basically suppressed. Um, this knowledge that I share it's held back because if people understood this, things would change. But so they hide purposely, from both humans and especially military, but they can manifest their physical being, wherever, whenever they want. Uh, and I think I've been told by Neff's family that, I haven't been given a visual yet. Dwayne has just once. That took 12 years, except for the photographs that he got. He didn't see him when that happened, but only once in 12 years. And he's the property owner. He's the one, basically, that's his, you know, family. They've been around him his whole life, right? And they basically told me, we don't know what kind of technology the military has to seek them out if they suddenly show their presence in their physical form. Especially with myself, I'm very watched, not watched by the CIA, thankfully, because I've asked them that, but they've told me I'm watched by both human and non-human, good and bad. Whatever that is, how that shows up, I don't know, but that's what they've told me, right? And I think there's probably rare opportunities that they could show themselves to me, and they have in other ways. Like they can manipulate our electronics. It's just insane what these guys can do. They can manipulate our any electronics. It's easy. Our audio, our video cameras, our cameras, phones, computer, it doesn't matter. If it's electronic, they can manipulate it. They could put something in a picture or take something out. Uh, um, I would sit with, I, instead of trying to trick them for a photograph, I was putting up trail cams at the beginning and that until I learned better. I bought a point and shoot camera for them to play with. I thought, okay, instead of trying to trick them, let's just give them a camera and see what they do with it. So I'd leave it on the kitchen table and images would start appearing. And there was, I know there was one night where Dwayne and I are sitting at the table talking. I got this camera sitting on the table and I kept checking it. Hasn't left my sight. Suddenly there's an image on there. Oh, another image. Images start showing up on this wall. It's right there in full view. Nobody's touching it. Um, so yeah, it's all very bizarre. It's all very interdimensional. And so yes, I don't know how many layers of dimensions there are, but they did give me because I use a sketch pad and chalkboard too, right? So on this sketch pad, the three dots in a triangle are very significant because they're very adamant about three dots in a triangle, whatever. Well, actually, I do know what has to do with it. It's a place that we can step into out of dimension, out of this 3D realm. We can do this, and I know for a fact we can do it because it's happened once on location way back. Um, I talk about this in my book that I'm almost done here. Um, so these three dots in a triangle, they've been very adamant about it. It's a safe place. They even showed it in a drawing where they drew this kind of demon face with horns, and it wasn't happy. And it had to do with stepping into another dimension, which the dark side cannot access. So it's a safe place. So if we can figure out how to do this, this shit show going on in the world, if I'm hoping at some point that I can learn to do that, to do what they do. You see some military come walking up the driveway and just, oh, see ya, poof, gone, until they leave. That's something I would use it for. But so, throughout this, there's a lot of stuff I've learned about them, about their people, and they are people, right? They're not animals. They are definitely something else. They are quite incredible.
Yeah, just another quick question as well, Mike. How do they survive in Arctic conditions? When it's really cold and really coming down. It's a surprise how they survive them as well.
I don't, they are built for the earth. So they told me they're first people. They're the first basically indigenous race of earth. They they are built for this place. So there's been things that they've thrown or held, and I've picked up, or you know, things that I've picked up, and they're almost hot to the touch from being held by them. So they retain a lot of body heat, and we don't know this other dimension that they reside in for the most part. We don't know if it's the same temperature there, right? But we get footprints all the time. And if it's minus 20 Celsius, they're still leaving prints, leave a trackway for us. Actually, the last visit, we got absolutely incredible footprint in the snow, one single one, and he's got to be 12 feet tall. It's a 20-inch print. Now, I'm going to put a video together and show this print. It's just phenomenal. I put my foot beside it and makes me look like a toddler. So he's probably with his foot size, I'm 6 feet, size 11, and I'd put him probably closer to 12 feet tall. But they give us footprints all the time, even at this point, minus 10, minus 20, it doesn't matter. We're outside. There could be nothing. And then suddenly, boom, there's a print. Oh, another one, another one. There's a track. Suddenly there's a trackway. They give us prints in real time. They haven't let us see them do it, make the prints, but they're literally, you turn your head for a second. I just look there, turn my head, look back, boom, there's a footprint now, right? So this is common with us. But yeah, as far as the temperature, don't think it bothers them at all.
Yeah, just one more question, Mike. When you first encountered them, was you scared of meeting them in the back of
Oh
the
yeah.
past? Yeah, you were.
Of course, I think anybody would have fear, right? Yeah, anybody with a weak heart, I wouldn't I wouldn't recommend getting involved in this too much, but it took the property owner too. We had a lot of fear. So when this started, I was putting my audio recorder in the woods on his property, and I would go 2 o'clock in the morning every visit to do a battery change to make sure my recorder kept recording through the whole night. Property owner would never come with me. He had too much fear. I had fear, and but I had to push through it, right? So I would go up into the woods, and sometimes I'm sitting there changing the batteries and I hear a clack clack from a couple of rocks close by. So I know they're right there watching me. I'm I'm a bit nervous. And especially when I first started in my tent, my biggest fear was like a big boulder or a tree coming down on my tent and killing me, right? But I also had a do or die kind of mentality. It's like I know what I got here and I'm not walking away from it. I'm pushing through the fear. If I die, oh well, at least I die doing something I love, but I'm still here. So
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. Back to you, Lee.
Thank you, Chris. I think at this point we'll bring in Dave.
Mike.
hey Dave.
Right. So, as far as like, I don't know, Bigfoot or these primate creatures, how far do they actually go back as far as date recordings?
Um there there's drawings and stuff. They date back, I think, thousands of years. But I think our historical record has been washed and changed and it's constantly being changed and um but there's talk of hairy wild men throughout the ages. You can find them in literature, but I honestly I don't know how far back that really dates as far as records of wild hairy men. I don't know how long they've been around, but according to them saying they're first people, I would think it's a long time, and the historical record is just not documented that.
Because when I was younger, obviously I heard about Bigfoot and the abominable snowman and things like this. But at what point was it known that they were more than just like a normal primate? There's obviously the intelligence. At what point of time do you think that was discovered?
Um, it's hard to say, like the Bigfoot community, a lot of them, they really they don't have any idea what they are. They tend to veer towards this Gigantopithecus, extinct Gigantopithecus offshoot, that came out of Asia, that they think crossed the Bering landmass when that was there, and they think it's an offshoot of that as an animal sort of thing. But as far as them being people, like the native culture has always spoken of them as being a people that can walk between two worlds, and that they have these abilities, right? But it's yeah, the Bigfoot community is very divided in that, and it's I got to distance myself from that because you get to a point where myself and the property owner, we're so evolved and experienced in this. It's just like when I look at the back and forth that goes on in the Bigfoot community, it's like you don't you don't know anything until you're interacting. That's when you learn, right? So most people, they might know they exist. People have had a sighting, some sightings, multiple sightings, but until you interact with them, that's when you really understand what you're dealing with.
I'm quite interested about the interaction. Obviously, you've had a huge amount of interaction with Sasquatch. Are you aware of many other individuals who have had so much?
Not as much as property owner myself. It's a very, very unique situation that we're involved in. But I do know of numerous other people that yes, they do interact with them, and those that do, we're all on the same page, about their abilities, and um, uh, they can. I think that they can. It's not just invisibility. I think they can shift. I think they control their frequency, so they can shift their frequency to be translucent, like Predator, like the movie Predator, or completely invisible, completely flesh and blood, and everything in between, depending on what frequency they choose to, show up in. But as far as I've had many people contact me over the years, sharing their stories with me and their experiences. Some people have got um, activity going on at home, and they contact me telling me, "Hey, I've never told anybody this before, but they hear me talking and they know that, okay, this guy knows the real stuff." So they feel comfortable in sharing with me. So yeah, I've talked to quite a few people over the years that, have this stuff ongoing.
And are you aware of how prevalent the Sasquatch are across the globe? Are they literally everywhere?
I'd say they're widespread, and their numbers, I don't know what their numbers would be, but they I think it, I think the numbers are up there, because there seems to be quite a few members in Neff's family. I don't know how many, but I would say at least a dozen of them, probably more. And yeah, they're practically everywhere, right? So they, like I said, they've evolved to where remain hidden by choice because they see what humans do. They see the destruction we cause. They see how destructive we are, and shoot first, ask questions later. They see who we are. They know humans better than humans know humans. Um, so yeah, as far as the numbers go, I'm not, I have no idea, but I remember I asked them one time, so how many of your people are there? They wrote 10,000, just I think they were being funny, right? Just like 10,000. Um, Maybe it is, but I don't think so.
I love the fact that they clearly have a sense of humour and they're quite mischievous, aren't they?
Lots and lots of that. Yeah, it's constant, it's very consistent.
Have they ever mentioned to you about an overarching creator, a god, if you like?
I've asked them, is Jesus Christ the Son of God? They said yes. I've asked them, who created humans? They didn't give me an answer. And this is written communication, right? So, and I'm not seeing it happen. So I'll ask a question out loud. I'll write it down. We go outside. It's sitting on the kitchen table. I come back in, and boom, there's an answer. But a lot of the times they don't respond to questions too, right? But I asked when I asked who created humans, they didn't say anything. So I changed my question, and I said, "Did the Anunnaki create humans?" And they said yes. So then I asked, "Do we have the same creator as them?" And they said no. So how that shows up, I don't know. These are, I'm not saying everything they're giving me is what it is, but um, I've come to learn that they hold honesty in high regard. They're very um, to be respected people. They hold on to their ancient ways, I think, and so as far as creation goes, them saying humans were created by the Anunnaki and they have a different creator, I don't know how that works. Maybe whoever created them first, maybe then the Anunnaki came down, took one of them and created humans. I'm just guessing here, right? Um, so yeah, like whatever the Anunnaki manipulating DNA and that, just what what they're doing today, same stuff. And yeah, so I haven't really got any more information than that from them about, creation.
Another question for you. What sort of reaction do you get? I'm sure you get various types of reaction, but is there a general theme from the cryptozoological community?
When I first started putting out the vocals back in 2013, um, I'd been documenting footprints and I was showing footprints in videos and everybody's saying, "Oh, follow the prints, see where they go." I said, I know where they go. And I left it at that. I didn't say they go and they don't go anywhere, all of them. All the footprints they give us are given purposely to us. They don't, they're not by chance, right? So I start putting this out and I didn't say anything. And I think it was probably close to a year where I finally come out with it and that the footprints all just suddenly stop or they're single prints. Sometimes there's dirt in the prints. I found prints where the trackway starts left and right, and there's dirt in the prints, and he starts walking right away. His foot goes clean. So that's strange in itself. So that's coming from another dimension. Actually, the 20-inch footprint we just documented has similar. You can see a bit of brown tinge in there from dirt on his feet. It's all snow up there, right? So I start putting out the vocalizations, which I've captured. They've given me such a library of phenomenal vocals over the years, direct verbal communication. And when I start putting that out, oh, I got ridiculed and attacked and harassed and stalked and labeled hoaxer, and because it's too good. Nobody has documented talking to a Sasquatch before and getting a response on a first name basis and them basically speaking some English words and that. Nobody had ever done that, right? So, of course, somebody got to do it first, and when I start putting that stuff out there, yeah, the Bigfoot community, I've been labeled a hoaxer, right? Because this is what they do. These people, they don't really have any experience, so it's too good or, too good to be true kind of thing. Um, and then it also came up with 7 years later, or it's 2019. Dwayne goes outside one night and he hears a giggle. It's late, right? Up close to midnight. And he hears like a little childlike giggle. That's Neff. And he pointed his phone, took a picture. Usually hears the shutter sound go off on his phone. He didn't hear it. So he took another picture a couple seconds later, which I'm glad he did because he didn't see right away. He goes in when he goes back inside, he zooms in. Neff's leaning on the fence and he's got a grin and then a full-on smile. And, I asked them the next visit, do you want those put in a video for the world to see? I wrote this down, right? And they ended up writing not yet. I was surprised at that answer. And I dropped it. It was There was some stuff that happened after that, that they were manipulating my camera, putting partial photos on there from those original shots. And I thought, oh, am I allowed to put these out? Because they're blurry. And they said, no. No, okay. And I didn't go against them, right? I think they're also waiting for the right time. So 3.5 years later, I got a message from them, Mike, you show. And it was about putting those two headshots out. And they're on my channel, Sasquatch Ontario on YouTube there. There's a few videos with those. And as soon as I put those, when they told me put those out, I knew it's like, oh man, here we go again, right? Because people aren't going to believe it. They're too clear. They're too good. People call them plastic masks, not realizing that they have a lot of oil in their skin, which I've shown through markings on my vehicle, handprints and stuff. It just beads up the water. They got a lot of very oily skin. So when those headshots were put out, yeah, I took a load of ridicule. And again, people call me hoaxer, right? But everything I've ever put out, it's all real. It's 100%. I've never embellished. You don't have to embellish anything with this. And it's they've spoiled me rotten with vocalizations and footprints and evidence and experience, and they've given me so much. It's just absolutely incredible. I can't believe how much they've given over the years, and it continues today, right? So,
Just before we say goodbye, I'd like to mention your book. What's your working title?
it's called Invisible Giant: A True Story of Sasquatch Contact. I'm basically done it, but I'm having issues with it's formatted properly. Everything's done, but I'm having problems with the file getting it uploaded to KDP. So um, hopefully that doesn't take me too long to figure out. But there's no other book on this subject written like this one. It's it's unique because of my perspective and experience, right? So I think people will enjoy it, and the timing's right too.
So hopefully it will be released in the next 2 to 3 months.
Oh, before that, like I was hoping. Um, Depends, like I said, with my file, I got to find out what's wrong with it, and other than that, it's done. Like it's basically polished front to back. I'm actually, after we get off here, I just got to do one more thing on it, and I'm sending off the manuscript to a friend of mine to give them the first read, basically, right? Get their opinion on it. So I'm hoping to have this out within, ASAP as soon as possible, right?
Well, I'm sure it will be an amazing read. And Mike, you've been an amazing guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
We'll see you again on the Shadowcast. My name is Lee, and it's goodbye from Chris,
Bye.
from Dave,
Bye.
and from Mike Paterson.
All right, guys.
We'll see you again.